Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Veteran Instincts. We are back to the Vagabond Open for a round 3 match between two players you may well have heard of. Marcel Manzano, a member of the Gold Squadron podcast and a very good player who's done well at multiple regionals, nationals and the worlds. And Cormac Higgins, who you may well never have seen at an event, but you've almost certainly been at an event that he was intending to go to. So hello, Cormac.
Hello. As I said, it's the cool thing to do now, not go to events.
You are indeed a trailblazer. We should all have followed your lead much earlier, then we wouldn't be in this trouble. So why don't we start off with this match by giving us a brief run through of your list, why you picked it, and what you felt when you saw what Marcel had brought to the table.
Okay, so in the Vagabond Open, you have to play a different faction every week, and I was yet to play Imperials. Imperials aren't a faction that I play that much at all, so I was struggling a little bit as to what to come up with, what I would like to fly. You had been flying a list, which I think you've talked about before, which is the 4 Horsemen, and that includes 3 of the same ships, but it had either Major Rhymer or a Cutlass Squadron with trajectory bombers. And I tried both of those options and I wasn't that keen on it. And I suspected that Marcel might be bringing aces. So I said, well, what about Vagabond? Got proximity mines. That means I can drop 2 in a turn. That seemed pretty good. I tried it out beforehand. It was actually quite fun to fly because dropping bombs is actually fun. Depending on your point of view. Marcel's list, then, when I saw it, it was a bit mixed, as in I see 3 aces and I'm happy because I've got things that can counter aces. The issue mainly that I had was going to be the bid, because despite the fact that he was loaded up, he was still able to get in at 196 and I was 197, and most of the time that's less of an issue. But with Annie, with advanced proton torpedoes and intimidation, there's a lot of elements there that meant Marcel could easily take out one of my ships quite quickly. So that was a slight worry. I didn't think it was going to be as straightforward as, oh, you've got a good ace list, I've got a good anti-ace list, I'm okay.
And it's interesting, isn't it, looking at bids, because usually when you're bidding with your highest initiative ships, your aces. And in this matchup, you have Soontir at I6, and Marcel doesn't have anything at I6. He has 2 I5s, and you have nothing at I5. So there's no overlap with those really high initiative aces. It's down at I4 where you're both bidding for control in this specific game. So how does that look with Anakin? If Anakin's moving before you, how different a game is that versus this one where he's moving after you?
It makes this a lot easier because I can use Vagabond as my blocker, but yes, still have Pure Sabak with pseudo double reposition, which is ailerons and with a barrel roll. And same with Fifth Brother, I can then decide, do I need to reposition? Do I need to just do my target lock to get the torps off? So it does change quite a lot. It also just means that in this situation, Annie can be wherever he wants to be. I'm probably not getting good shots on Annie.
Absolutely. And an Anakin moving after you is a much scarier proposition, right? Because, as you say, he has the big hit with the advanced proton torpedoes, but he also has intimidation on him. So Marcel can choose every turn, essentially, with Anakin's pre-reveal barrel roll, whether he is arc dodging, whether he's trading shots with you, whether he is bumping into you so these other ships can get better quality shots. It makes Anakin a really quite scary piece.
So, having discussed all that, we can see that Marcel has indeed gone ahead and given you initiative. So you're kind of moving first and shooting first, hoping to leverage Anakin moving second, as we've talked about. You've both brought gas clouds to the table, and we can see we're sort of 4 obstacles into the gas clouds being placed here. 5th one just going down. What were you hoping for in terms of turn 0, where the gas clouds set up, where you were going to set up? How did you kind of plan to engage versus Marcel?
So I wasn't really sure at the start. I think this is the Downside of a tournament like this, where you are running a new list, ideally this would be one of your practice games. So my initial thought was that I'm going to keep the three lower initiative ships together and use Soontir as either a flanker or as bait. So I wanted a relatively open space for the three ships to maneuver around. I didn't want it that easy for his Jedi to use their double reposition to get behind gas clouds. But I wasn't really sure. I just kind of went, okay, well, let's keep them in the middle. Let's keep an open space and then go from there.
And how happy were you with sort of how it ended up?
I think that was actually a pretty good open space for me, because I was automatically at this point, I'm thinking I'm going to set up my ships at the top so that I've got this open area on the top right that I can then move into, and he either has to commit through the gas clouds or he has to engage me out in that open area, which should make life a lot easier for me rather than having to try and chase through the clouds.
We can see that you did quite a nice job of achieving that final gas cloud, that's sort of the one nearest the bottom of the board, was placed by Marcel, and at that point he couldn't cover both corners of the board, right? So you've got your open area in the top corner. Had he put it there, you would have had an open area in the bottom corner, and setting up first with the more aggressive jousty list of the two, you're always going to have the ability to kind of threaten that area of the board and fly into it. So it looks like you've kind of achieved what you wanted to with the gas clouds. I suppose it will now just be a case of seeing whether that pays off and whether that was the right plan.
Yeah, and with the three ships, so I set them up in the corner. I set Fifth Brother. I'm assuming he's going to set something up opposite me, but I'm also assuming that that's not going to be there for longer. But I set Fifth Brother up on the outside because he wants to be the person who's furthest back and using the homing torpedoes. He doesn't need to be in the joust initially.
Yeah, he's the one that's least likely to be taking a defensive token, right? Because on that engage, he wants to passive sensors or lock something.
Yes.
And so what sort of opening are you expecting from Marcel? You said obviously one chip to be facing you, which he's done. It looks very much like it's going to bail turn 1 or turn 2 away from you.
To pick up on there, sorry to jump in, but it's slightly hard to see because it's tucked in behind our overlay. But Marcel's actually done something that's interesting and something that I sort of generally advise against, which is that he's set Plo up facing along his board edge, so he's not threatening coming towards and threatening the joust. So just to clarify that before Cormac goes on to answer the question, what does that inform your decision making about turn 1?
Yeah, because with that kind of flanker where he is set up, I know what he's going to do is it's obviously bait. He obviously wants me to go all for that. He's going to run away. But equally, I know that he's going to run away to a point where he can always turn back in. He's not going to completely run away down along his board edge. He's always going to leave it a little bit open so that he can hard 1 or hard 2 inwards and try and get the flank back on my ships if I turn too far away from him. So in the first couple of turns, my biggest thought process was, okay, I need to just put pressure onto Plo. I'm not going to get him, but I also just need to make sure that I don't leave my flank open so that Poe can easily turn back around and just attack me from behind eventually.
So you want Marcel to be at a point where his Plo is always having to run away. He never can leave himself an option to turn back in. Is that right?
Exactly.
And that's something we've spoken about in previous episodes, where when you're flying aces, you want to give yourself that chance every turn where your opponent has to always be deciding, is this ship going to turn out or is it going to turn back in? And you want to, as the ace player, leave your options open as long as possible. So here Cormac's talking about taking that option away from Marcel by pressuring him.
And that kind of then also informed my decision on Soontir, because I'm not a Soontir player and I wasn't really sure what to do with him. And I was tempted to put him out come opposite Obi, but I thought that was probably a little bit too far away from the rest of the ships. The Jedi are really good at 5King and still having mods. So I said, I'll keep him close, but I'll keep him on the edge so that he can threaten Obi, that Obi and Annie can't be overly cavalier. So that was kind of the thought process there. Now, again, not sure if it was correct, but that was where I was approaching it from.
And I think that makes sense. As you say, you don't want him hung out in a corner. The risk there being that he will get caught by Obi-Wan or even Obi-Wan and Anakin and preyed upon before the rest of your list gets in. If the rest of your list has to hard turn to go and save Suntir, then you can no longer do your plan. You can no longer scare Plo, and Plo will get in behind you. So I really like this idea of keeping him close, keeping you out to that side, so that, as you say, they can't. The two ships at the bottom of the board here can't 5 straight and get right up in your face. From here, what I was expecting, how I would be playing this, was almost to always try and keep those 3 top corner ships in between Suntir and Marcel's list. So what I'm expecting here, obviously Cormac, but from Lloyd's point of view, is I think I'm expecting the fast moves we're starting to see from Cormac's sort of first 3 ships, and then maybe Suntir 2 harding to duck in behind into that corner, so that there's no way that Marcel can come at Suntir without having to go through the rest of the list. What would you be thinking?
Potentially. I was looking at it again from where Marcel's looking at the engagement happening. So he's got this sort of from where Obi is. He's got 1 gas cloud in front and then almost like a ring of 3. And it looks very much to me like Marcel is going to try and have the fight happen in that bottom corner of the board. So I think I'm expecting Anakin to turn away, barrel down to the back towards the board edge. Or barrel first, as he says, before it happens. But I'm expecting Marcel to want to have the fight down in that bottom corner. So to bring Cormac through, so that Cormac has to take shots through gas clouds in the opening engage, and Marcel is limiting either the shots or the quality of shots that he's taking. So I'll be interested to see if that's how it comes out. I think Anakin might already be slightly further forward than I would have expected in that situation. Maybe Marcel will be a bit more aggressive in his opening than I would have thought. But it looks from that rock setup that that's the kind of engagement Marcel wants. And so then the challenge, I think, for Cormac is how to make sure he's getting the engagement he wants rather than the one that Marcel is building toward. Yeah,
and that makes sense, doesn't it? Because, as you say, Cormac's list is a very powerful, very punchy one, can do real damage to ships. You've got Sabak rolling 4 to 5 dice in the opening, the homing missiles coming through, and even Vagabond is a 3 dice gun. And Marcel has a list that even with the regen cannot take big lumps of damage. That's how he starts to lose the game. So having those gas clouds in and maybe tempting Cormac into taking those homing missile shots even through the gas cloud is the sort of way to deal with them. Cormac, you kind of race those 3 forward to kind of, as you said, to threaten Plo and kind of fly in that open space. Plo, as expected, is not turning in for the joust. It would have been crazy to do so, and is running, but in that position where he can still turn in next turn. What's your thoughts in this opening in terms of Suntir? I've said I'd maybe 2 hard him left and duck him in. You've just 2-backed him right. What was the thought behind that?
The thought behind it really was, my worry was if I did the 2 hard away, I still didn't present enough of a flank. So ideally what I wanted to do really was a 1 bank. Now, obviously, I can't do that. But I think looking at it, I probably would have been better off with maybe a hard 1, something along that lines, just to keep me closer to that bottom board edge. The 2 bank got me in a little bit too quickly.
But you are sort of, the advantage of what you've done versus what I would have done is that you are giving Marcel something to think about in terms of, does he race Obi and Annie in, because Suntir is there with the arc facing that way, whereas the hard 2 away would have meant that he could have been a bit quicker, a bit more aggressive with those bottom 2 ships.
Well, again, so my first thing is, number 1, I'm thinking with Plo, he's going to keep, I don't think he's going to run away completely. I think he's going to turn in, and I don't want to then hard turn my ships in to then give a open advantage to Plo the following turn. So I'm thinking I need to just keep pressure on Plo, turn my ships gradually inwards, see where Obi and Annie go. I didn't expect Obi and Annie to go that quick this turn. I expected them to be a little bit conservative, kind of like he was being with Plo. So I'm thinking it's a bit of a free turn to allow my ships to get in. They don't need to be in shooting, but I'm probably not at that much risk that they're not shooting.
Cool. And I think a way to approach these turns, especially in the opening of the game where you've got a lot of ships to think about, is to kind of go for the obvious ones first, right? So from Cormac's point of view, these top 3 ships, Fifth Brother, Pure Sabak, and Vagabond, all really want to be 3-banking, don't they? So probably an aileron straight forward and then 3-bank them all in to keep putting that pressure on Plo, mean that Plo can't come towards you, and also be in position to swing round the kind of top right-hand side of the board and come down towards where Anakin is next round if Plo does disengage hard. From Marcel's point of view, I don't know what you think, guys. I kind of feel like Plo has to hard one here, hard one towards. He obviously, and it's a kind of a weird one because having done that, he then absolutely cannot go in next turn. But if he doesn't, if he does a longer maneuver, maybe the 1 bank is also fine, and that's probably better. But something like the 1 hard or the 1 bank, because anything longer, any more of a sort of definite run away means that Cormac's achieved what he wanted to, and he has at least a turn where he doesn't then have to worry about Plo. So I kind of feel like Plo has to 1 hard right or 1 bank right here, threaten turning in the turn after, whilst really having no intention of ever doing that.
Yeah, I think I agree, because it's, at the risk of sounding like, kind of a tedious military nut, it's almost like 2 battle lines approaching, right? And they're trying to both kind of scrabble to keep that edge flank. And Cormac's threatening it with Fifth Brother, and Plo almost has to respond to that. And I think the 1 bank is what I would be looking at as well, because it gives you the choice. If Cormac turns hard to come down towards Soontir, then Plo can flank in. I think that's unlikely, but you give yourself the option, right? Which is what we always talk about with ace play.
And also from a Soontir point of view, I'm expecting that Anakin and Obi-Wan will sort of make moderate speed moves towards the center of the board here. So I think with Soontir, I like the 2 bank to the left. It will sit you facing that gas cloud, but it will give you the option to, if Obi and Anakin have gone for Soontir, to barrel roll boost behind that sort of paler gas cloud. But if Anakin, for instance, has hard turned to catch the other guy's 3 banking, then you could come to the bottom side of that paler gas cloud and get some free shots into Anakin. So I kind of think that, again, that option's open. Give him a defensive move to run away or an aggressive move. I kind of like the 2 bank left.
Yeah, I think the 2 bank left probably was the best move. I had in my dial the 2 hard left because I was a little bit worried about him going too fast. But then I decided I think he's not going to go that fast. I think I'll just basically hedge my bets and stay in the middle. But actually, I think the 2 bank was the better move. And here's the strikers basically just trying to do, as we said, just 3 bank in, trying to get some pressure put on.
And what are your, we'll see in a moment, Lloyd, but what are your thoughts with Anakin?
So I think for Marcel, his list is all too close together. What he wants, and what we often see with aces, is that you'll spread them out and you'll pick both flanks and try and make your opponent commit to one. But here he's got all of his ships into quite a small area of the board, and Plo is facing towards the rest of his list as well. So he's giving himself a very small area. He is probably a turn away from the fight happening where I thought he wanted it to happen. But all of his ships are a bit too condensed, and what he might find is one of them ends up getting a bit trapped unless he bails hard. So I think with this turn, I'd be looking to pre-barrel roll Anakin left, and then either a slow sort of like a 1 forward or something down towards where Obi is, and just try and keep a bit of range so that you have a bit more choice with Plo, because getting them all close together with Cormac having kind of a fairly sort of scary alpha strike almost with those ships, you don't want multiple ships rolling in if you can't bail them all out.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if Obi might actually do a 3 bank left as well and just get behind to that lower
and that's what I would have been looking at for this. I think Marcel brought Obi in probably a bit too fast last turn, and then also sort of banked him in and gave himself slightly fewer options. Like he's almost taken away the option of that left gas cloud for Obi to go around it, and so he's really condensed the fight into this area.
And so we can see Anakin here has been a little bit more aggressive. I think I agree with you that this is not a bad spot to end up in, the fast move to end up behind this gas cloud, but he may have been better off with the barrel roll first, so he's just that little bit further away from Cormac's top ships. He attempted to take the target lock there, and crucially was just a millimetre out from getting Soontir. I think that the Anakin move here is a kind of aggressive play to catch Soontir, But obviously not being able to pick up that target lock on Suntir means that he's a much less scary proposition with no advanced proton torps. Slightly surprising move with Plo, we think, having said what we said, in that he has sort of come hard into the same area of the board and sort of perhaps compounded what we were saying was potentially a problem in that his sort of list is all now in the same area of the board with Cormac bearing down on it.
I wonder if Marcel is just a slightly more aggressive player than a lot of the ace play we've seen so far. So he's still giving himself the option with Plo. I would expect Plo will probably do something like a 1-turn right next turn. And then you've got the option of going right around the gas cloud if everything turns hard in.
Yeah.
Or sort of going left around it if everything chases in a straight line. So if the strikers carry on going straight, then Plo can barrel left and still get shots and dodge a lot of things.
Yeah, I think that we can see the two straight in from Suntir here, and Suntir sort of perhaps in a bit of a scary spot at the moment, but looks to me like the barrel roll left is probably okay, or slightly difficult to judge on vassal. But if the barrel roll to the right gets him out of Obi's arc, then he shouldn't take too much damage from Anakin. At range 2 to 3.
No, again, I think Suntir 2 forward was really it was just a bad move because it was indecisive, and actually what I would have been better off was probably deciding one way or the other. Mm-hmm. But I honestly did not think that Obi or Annie would come in that quickly, particularly Obi. Yeah. I really didn't think Obi would be where he was. So that was an issue, and particularly was going to be an issue for next turn, because I know that Annie with Obi with sense and Annie with intimidation and the proton torpedoes can make life very difficult for Suntir.
Yeah, and you're now sort of far too close to everything. So take the evade there, because you know you've got incoming fire, barrel roll for the stress, but do get the focus. And then we have the first shot of the game coming in here.
So how do you feel about this engagement, Cormac?
I feel not very good, as in I don't mind where Suntir is for this turn, but I do know that next turn I am in trouble. Sure. Because I can't see a good exit for Suntir that doesn't involve him getting a very serious shot, if not multiple, into him. So I am not really happy with that.
And so you Predator there for 2 hits, decide not to spend the focus, and Obi-Wan rolls the 1 evade. So you do get a sort of early bonus of chipping a shield through there onto Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I didn't spend a focus there because I thought Obi was in, but actually again on Vassal, I wasn't sure.
And so we see that Obi was out, but Anakin has rolled natural double crit. But you're okay. You're at range 3 with all the tokens. Never likely to take anything there. So yeah, I think your assessment is absolutely correct, isn't it? That although you've gotten out of trouble this turn with Suntir, and maybe on the face of it, you know, you've done a damage to Obi-Wan, you've not taken anything. That's not awful, but Suntir has a problem for this turn. If he's going to clear his stress, then his options are the straight moves all look like they clip that gas cloud.
Yep.
The 2 bank right obviously ends up in the middle of it, which is not desirable. I think the 2 hard right may clear everything and may put you on the other side of the gas cloud. But the issues with that are twofold. One, obviously you've turned Suntir completely away from the fight. And the second is that Anakin can still block you. He's got a collision detector. We didn't highlight that at the start, so he can ignore this gas cloud entirely. He can be anywhere that Suntir can be. And with the combination with sense, he can, and his pre-barrel rolls, he can cover a lot of the options. So let's leave Suntir for a second and go through the easy ships. Your top 3 ships presumably are sort of just gonna bank in or turn into the center of the board.
Yeah, at this point now, I'm looking at thinking, okay, Suntir is not in a good position. I need to make sure if Suntir is getting shot or Marcel's ships are in that area taking shots on Suntir, that I'm getting good shots in return. So whilst Plo in this situation, he could have one-harded and got my flank, I'm less concerned about that because I'd be behind the gas cloud, and my ships again would be threatening. So I'm just at this stage thinking, right, these just need to get in here as quick as possible.
Yeah, I agree completely. And again, it's something we talk about a lot, right? Is reassessing every turn. So we've spoken so hard about controlling that flank and making sure Plo doesn't get around the side of you. But in this situation, what we're looking at is Soontir is under threat, and you need to be able to bring guns in to make Marcel consider, whether he wants to be that aggressive or to punish him if he is.
Yeah, and that's shows that sort of a relative, the error with Soontir of that too straightforward, which obviously is an error in hindsight, but the error that it's turned out to be has removed your ability to worry about Plo, right? You cannot be conservative. You cannot keep herding Plo because now you need to go and save Soontir, or at least trade for Soontir if he is going to blow up. So yeah, it sort of shows the knock-on effect of that small decision of the two straight rather than the two bank in either direction. Has not only put Soontir in trouble, but has meant the rest of your list has to make what is potentially a slightly suboptimal move this turn. I think for the one hard from Plo, the one thing that might save you and might stop Marcel doing it is, although the one hard from Plo, he can then barrel roll and boost to get around the right hand side of that gas cloud. If Cormac was to continue in a straight line and threaten him, the escape the other way is not so good. So he could barrel roll and be behind the gas cloud this turn, but then next turn he sees himself sort of running over it and running into it. So he has the potential for, if Cormac were to go straight with the top three ships, to get Plo kind of in trouble if he tries to get the flankers. I wonder whether that will cause him to do something different.
Now, I'm also at this point, I'm looking at Marcel. Like, Soontir is my big concern at this stage, and I'm looking at Marcel and I'm thinking, okay, Obi-Wan is going to sense. There's a very good chance Obi-Wan does a 2 sloop to the left. Still is going to have a target lock. He's going to have double mods. I'm thinking Annie could easily just 1 or 2 bank, because with sense and with the reposition, he'll almost certainly get the block on Soontir, and then Plo could easily just 5 forward again, all into Soontir, high behind the middle gas cloud. So I'm really thinking the too hard away with Soontir. But my worry there was Soontir is out of the battle. He probably still gets shot.
Sorry, Cormac, just clarify, too hard away is to Soontir's right.
Yes, to Soontir's right, yes. But my worry there is that he just doesn't get a shot. I thought the too hard left might actually work. But again, I'm in a risk position and I'm not getting a shot. So actually what I decided to do was, okay, if I'm going to give up Soontir, or he's in risk, where can he go that's going to give him the most damage output, and also keep Marcel's ships in that area so that my other ships can have the shots on them.
Yeah, and I've come to the same conclusion. I think that you almost have to, with Soontir, to bank him left here, and you accept that may well be bumping, that may well be a bit of a disaster, but if you do bump, the maximum shots you take are 2 incoming shots. You're going to get your focus. Obviously, bumping into intimidation ship isn't good, but in the position you're in, you're either bumping into Annie. We're bumping into Obi, in which case you're not intimidated, and Anakin crucially doesn't have the target lock on you, so is unlikely to be able to get it, unlikely to be able to advance proton torpedo. Or you're bumping into Annie, and then Obi-Wan is probably either slooping, in which case only got forceful mods, or has bumped Annie himself and has only got forceful mods. So I think the 2 bank left is the best of a bunch of bad options. From Marcel's point of view here, I think you can trap Soontir. I think if you dial in the 3 straightforward with Anakin, then with a combination of the collision detector and the pre-barrel roll, you can be in position to block the 2 hard away to the right by flying into that gas cloud and boosting, or to be right in front of Anakin. And I think at that stage you dial in the hard 1 to the left with Obi-Wan and bump him into the back of Anakin, and then just create a sort of a car park at that point of the board. So you have a bumped intimidated Soontir, and you have Obi-Wan at range 1 of him with a shot, only single modded, but a shot nevertheless. And then I agree, 5 straighting Plo forward seems good because it gets him behind the central gas cloud, and gets him shots on where Suntir will be. So I think that's kind of my plan. And the only real downside of that is if Suntir 2 hards away, and even then you can probably catch him with Anakin. It's just that Obi-Wan will not be in position to have a shot on him. Do you think that sounds reasonable, or are there kind of flaws in that plan?
The only flaw from my point of view is, and this is important to remember to look at your opponent's list, is I had forgotten that Annie had collision detector. So I was not even thinking about Annie going over that gas cloud nearest to me.
I was going to say, because without collision detector, it's very different, right? Like it has significantly fewer options of where it can be and what it can do. And that collision detector is a sneak up, where it's not something you see often, but in the right instance, it's an incredible use of 6 points.
Yeah, and in combination here with Anakin's pre-maneuver barrel roll, I think that's the power, right? That he's got that option to reposition almost wherever he is on the board. Are there other options for Marcel? You kind of feel like he has to try and capitalise on this mistake from Suntir. He still doesn't want any part of those top 3 ships, so can't really turn towards. So I think, for me, the only kind of real choice here is with Plo, and whether he goes on to do that hard turn right. And as we've said, there are problems with that, and maybe he won't. Anakin, I suppose, could swing round to try and get the advanced proton torps into Vagabond, although it seems like he would be taking it's difficult to guarantee the shot, and he'd be taking an awful lot of fire if he did.
Yeah, I think at this point the hole that Suntir is in, Marcel has to commit everything to it. So I think, as you said, having again talked so hard about the flank, I think at this point Plo also gives it up and goes hard for Suntir.
Mm-hmm. And then you're hoping that you kill Suntir, and then sort of take a few turns to reposition and get a good engagement with the other. Again,
remembering everything in Marcel's list can regen.
Yes, yeah. So you could take some fire this turn, sort it out, and come back around. And actually, once you don't have Suntir to worry about, then you probably can PS kill one of those strikers, and then have a 3v2, which starts looking heavily in your favour. Okay, so this is the sense presumably on Suntir, so we can see you are 2 banking left. And now, at the time, there was debate, which unfortunately you've given the game away, Cormac. So there was debate. We were sort of sat watching this, having a chat. Lloyd wasn't, but myself and a few of the other members of the 186th. And then we were split firmly into 2 camps of, one, is Cormac crap and has flown into that gas cloud by mistake, or 2, is he a genius and has blocked the collision detector move? And to be fair, we gave you the benefit of the doubt, but unfortunately, as you are not aware that it's in his list.
No, to be honest, I wasn't that. It's the difficulty with strikers is obviously I'm not used to playing them, and actually judging where the pre-boost and 3 bank puts you was really difficult. But the counter to that was I didn't really care as long as I was in that area, because I thought
just threatening arcs, right?
I thought it was very unlikely Vagabond was going to get that many shots on him that was going to cause any problems.
Yeah, and the trade-off is that although Vagabond is out of position with no actions, one, you have blocked that advanced sensors move, right? So the barrel roll, so you have forced Anakin to come away, and 2, it's put Piotr back much closer to the action. If you'd one banked, which I think would have fit for both of them into that gap, then Piotr back is just that bit farther away from the action. So Anakin here, it would be interesting to hear from Marcel. Unfortunately, we can't. But whether he was intending to barrel roll towards and having to barrel roll away here, he's spending his first collision detector to allow him to take actions, sort of despite hitting this gas cloud here.
So interestingly, at the time, because myself and Marcel were talking about, and we were talking through the game and talking through our different moves. Interestingly, at the time, he was actually most worried about Annie getting shot by the other ships.
Okay.
So he was primarily concerned that he didn't want to block Suntir, but end up with losing Annie to the other ships. Which is fair. I'm not sure if he needed to be as worried about Annie in that situation, but
I think, like you say, the thought process is sound, in that a trade of Suntir for Anakin is not a good trade for him. It's not disastrous, but it's certainly not ideal. I think the thing that maybe meant that he could be more aggressive is that actually Vagabond unmodded and shooting through a gas cloud is very unlikely to do any damage to Anakin. He could have gone, I think, 3 straight forward from where he was, used his collision detector on that gas cloud to get his focus or evade, and sat there in the blocking position for Suntir, and really is only taking the 1 shot from Sabak and would be unlucky to take more than sort of 2 damage from it.
I think he was expecting Suntir to turn too hard to his right as well, in which case Annie would have been in the perfect position, because we'll see with Obi's move that would have put Obi in a great position as well on Suntir.
And so Plo 1 banking there, using the cover from the gas cloud. That's a really nice move, isn't it? Because it gave him the ability to sort of go either side of that gas cloud. Relatively safe. Fifth Brother took the passive, so potential homing missile here, but
so interestingly, I'm at this point I still wasn't that worried about Plo with that shot. I looked at it and went, okay, well, he's not going to do. If he shoots a Vagabond, fine. Vagabond is only there to drop bombs. If he shoots a Sabak with a focus, I'm unlikely to take much damage. And obviously he's not going to shoot a Fifth Brother. So I wasn't overly sad about that position for Plo.
And especially now with that too hard coming in from Obi. We can see that Suntir is gonna fly clear over the top of everything, and actually is looking like he's going to get away pretty unscathed. We'll wait for him to see, but I wonder if he can. Suntir can certainly hide behind the gas cloud if he needs to, but I wonder if he may even be able to arc dodge Plo here and just get some unanswered shots. Obi boosting there, I think sensible. Sort of knows Suntir is going to be on the other half of the board next turn, and so needs to come around that corner to threaten, and also gets himself further away from those two strikers who are sort of a bit scary, especially if you're Sabak. Has taken the opportunity to regen there, so it's back up to full health.
And Cormac, can we talk a little bit about your decision to come in slower with Fifth Brother? Because I think there are 2 sort of arguments for it. Do you want to talk a little bit about why you decided to bring him in slower?
Did he not 3 bank as well?
He did, but he couldn't aileron. So I suppose that's you could have boosted around the corner here to sort of threaten the same area of the board, but obviously then wouldn't have your homing missiles.
It was just that. It was primarily just to try and keep the homing missiles on Plo if he came in that area. Because I thought even with the boost, I'm unlikely to get a good shot on Annie or Obi. I won't have my target lock, so I kind of said I'm not gaining a whole lot by doing that. Now I did take an evade and barrel roll with Suntir because I wasn't eyeing the arc of Plo well enough. There was absolutely no need to take this evade, although we'll see next turn it probably helped me because I was stressed.
So at the moment you've unnecessarily reduced Suntir's options for next turn, but he gets a nice hit in there. So that's spends the focus for 3 hits, but Plo rolling good natural evade dice and spending a force to take nothing. So needless evade there. One of those things that if it's on the table, you wouldn't need to do. It's that uncertainty of a kind of new way of playing.
And just as Plo takes this shot, so I think the second part of Fifth Brother slow rolling in or coming in and leaving some distance behind the strikers is giving yourself distance for bombs if you need to, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that's very easy to forget when you've got, especially a low initiative bomb carrier, is that you fly them all in a box and then you never have space to actually drop your prox mine without bombing yourself. So I think that was the second argument for potentially why you would want to separate them a little bit.
Yeah, and Lloyd proving he hasn't already watched this match by talking all over the Plo shot. Plo there rolling hit focus, adding the focus and spending his focus to do to roll 3 into Pure Sabak, who blanks out. And I think Cormac, from being in a really nice position in terms of where all the ships are, to take 3 damage on Pure Sabak there, turn off his ability in one go and leave him 1 health off dead is very unlucky. Perhaps because of that, you shoot the homing missiles here, and was that always the plan, or is it because of that sort of big hit onto Pure Sabak you kind of feel like you need something?
Yes and no. Like, it's always the plan, but equally, I'm hoping that he has to spend force.
Okay.
So it's a case of I'm not expecting it to do anything, but if he has to spend his force, it means next turn he's a lot more limited as to where he can go.
And that's worked out. And you got the sort of slightly under average 3 with the gas cloud and spending his last force. He doesn't take any damage, but you have force starved in. And that's sort of a big cost, taking one of those homing missile shots. They are, potentially really powerful, but to trap play for next turn may be worth it. We can see here Sabak, a newly 3 dice pure Sabak at range 3 of Anakin, rolling 3, trying his best, but Anakin with the evade and the cloud taking no damage. And then the last remaining is a obstructed shot from Vagabond, who only rolls 1 crit, and Anakin would be fine unless he rolled all focuses, and just doesn't roll all focuses, so is okay because of the gas cloud there. So how are you? I think this is a good point, and we talk about reassessing. That's the message of Veteran Instincts is constantly reassess. So you've got yourself in a really nice position here. Anakin and Obi-Wan, both facing away from the fight, are going to have to hard turn if they want to get involved again. Plo, with a couple of dangerous ships facing him in Suntir and Fifth Brother, but that big hit on Pure Sabak means that rather than, I think if that hadn't happened, you sit here thinking, well, this is going marvellously, I'm doing really well. Does that sort of put doubt in your mind? Does it change your ideas for this turn, or?
Yeah, well, it just means Sabak is very vulnerable now. Not only has he gone from being one of the most powerful ships, but he can easily be PS killed. And that was a big concern that I had at this stage, because despite the fact that even now I would normally be happy enough in the position, I know that I 46 points there in Sabak that can easily be taken by Marcel at any point. So it does change my decision making a lot. Actually, the stress on Soontir also changed my decision making, because I suspect I expected at this stage that Plo would just try and get out as much as possible. I thought he could even 1 hard away, use the Jedi to just get out of ranges. I thought he might 5 straight. I just thought he would probably not be anywhere that I'd be able to shoot him. So I think if I wasn't stressed with Soontir, I would very likely be doing a 1 hard and turning back towards Obi and Annie. Now, as it turned out, I kind of reassessed the position and kind of went, okay, well, Plo is over here. It doesn't benefit me doing it too hard. I just put myself in a worse position against Obi. So actually, let's just go forward and see where Plo is going.
And so to kind of look at the maneuvers now, Vagabond, this is a good opportunity to talk about his pilot ability. Vagabond's pilot ability is that he can drop a bomb or a mine after he ailerons. Normally, you can only drop 1 bomb and or mine per turn, but the restriction there is that you can drop 1 bomb or mine in the activation phase. So because the aileron happens in the movement phase, it sort of bypasses that. So the opportunity here looks like a kind of relatively obvious 1 bank aileron to the right, which puts you in a nice position to go chasing Obi-Wan and Anakin, and also gives you, with your skilled bombardier, the 2 straight backwards bomb lay to kind of basically fill up the space between these 2 middle gas clouds with your proximity mine. For that reason, I agree with you. I think in my head I had the 1 hard right from Plo through the gas cloud. The only way that really puts him in trouble is if Fifth Brother calls it, and it's quite a big call for Fifth Brother to make, because if he gets it wrong, he's himself is out of the game for a few turns. So that feels quite safe. The alternative is the 1 hard right, which I think is probably okay, although slightly difficult to judge on Vassal, and then probably boost towards Soontir, because if you're right up in Soontir's grill at this point, being stressed, he can't get arcs on you. So I think that's sort of how you get Plo out of trouble, and I think because of that, I'm thinking Fifth Brother probably just 2 straights maybe to down towards the bottom of the board edge, leaving the ability to kind of cover that 1 left away from Plo. Lloyd, what are you thinking with the kind of rest of the list? What are Obi and Anakin doing here?
I was busy working out whether a 2 forward with fifth brother is going to be very close to your prox mine if Plo doesn't take it.
I think close, but with with the 1 hards that they have, he can. I think he can get out of that next turn. As my assessment.
Okay, so for Obi and Anakin, I think it's an interesting situation, right? Because Marcel is up on points, everything is regened back up to full health, and he's in a pretty good situation in terms of health, as you say. Pure Sabak is very killable, one-shottable at this point. Based on how he's been playing so far, I would expect something quite aggressive. But I don't think, as you say, Cormac, you were talking to him during the game, like he is aggressive with his ships, but doesn't want to just throw them into things, right? So I would have looked at something like a 3 hard from Anakin to get shots in again, knowing that it's going to be fairly hard for most things to turn in on it. But I wonder if even that feels a bit too aggressive. I wonder if he'll disengage with Anakin this turn and go round and just kind of wait until he can drag the strikers out of position and try and chip one away. I think Obi-Wan almost has to come down to the bottom of the board. If the strikers are coming down to the bottom left of the board as we look at it, they're coming through a lot of gas cards that are all going to be without actions. So I think Obi can afford to 2 hard and boost down and try and threaten Soontir. But yeah, I feel like probably Anakin disengages this turn and he sort of starts to spread his list apart a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's sensible. I think the one thing that might change things is the lock that he has on Vagabond, and that sort of possibility of getting the advanced protons off. Although, as we can see here, Vagabond has gone very quickly and has closed down that space. So it's even with the barrel roll, it's going to be tricky for Anakin to get shots on Vagabond here. And Sabak just matching Vagabond, which makes sense, kind of being aggressive, and the kind of 2 of them there just kind of in position to either worry Marcel's ships this turn or to kind of turn and chase them if they run away. You take the evade there with Sabak.
Probably, like, again, I think that's being influenced by what has happened the previous turn. Mm-hmm. In retrospect, you look at it and straight away after I put down the evade, I'm like thinking, the focus is always better here. But you're automatically, from the previous turn, you've lost so much damage. It's really important to have that ability to be able to still stay focused. And if I had, I would have focused, because I think evade is the wrong call here.
Yeah, because I think that it's very unlikely that Obi-Wan shoots you. Evade slightly better defensively, but only slightly. If Anakin turns in and we can see his barrel rolling out here, that he may well kill you. But at that point, I don't know that the evade saves you any more than the focus does. And if you've got the focus, you can have it at least for that return fire because you're both at I4. Anakin here only just, but does bump on that 3 hard, which obviously leaves him very vulnerable. So he's now sat at range 1 of 2 strikers with no tokens, but has, because of the bump, sort of kept Vagabond and Arc. Obi-Wan himself bumping, so again sat with no shots at range 1, and we've just got Plo Koon left.
So the Anakin move here, I know from talking to Marcel at the time, the 1 hard with Obi was obviously going to fit if Annie didn't have to use his reposition first off, and if it had just squeezed by Obi. So he sacrificed, or I suppose put Obi at risk due to trying to get that advanced proton torpedo shot from Annie. So that was the thought process, in that he made a mistake, but then equally weighed up the balance of saying, okay, well, if I get my proton torpedo shot off, there's a very, very good chance here that I can actually get higher up in points, and with regen, I shouldn't lose that much of my ship in return.
Yeah, if he one-shots Vagabond, for example, which I assume is probably the one he's going, because he can initiative kill it, a 3 dice back with no offensive mods probably doesn't do anything too significant to Obi-Wan that he can't regen back.
Yeah, and although it's sort of not ended up great, you still have the choice to the chance to shoot yourself out of trouble. And it sounds like Marcel was doing a really good job. That it'd be very easy at that situation to kind of think, oh well, this is a disaster. and just sort of let things play out as they would. And Marcel has at least thought about it and taken a calculated risk of sort of saying, right, well, at this point, getting the advanced proton top shot is more important than making sure OB is able to run away. And that may well turn out to be the correct thing, because as you say, if Vagabond dies or takes significant damage here, without Pure Sabak rolling very good natural dice, you do score some more points and probably don't lose anymore. Obi-Wan still has a regen left, can afford to take a bit of damage, and might be okay. So with that, shall we restart the video and see how Plo goes? Oof, a 1 bank to the left there from Plo. So takes a damage from the proximity mine and rolls, oh god, 2 crits, taking a structural damage and a hull breach, and could have been dead in one shot there, but now sat with 1 health left. Cormac, I presume there that Marcel just forgetting about the bomb and that instance.
Yeah, completely forgetting about, not being used to what Vagabond's ability does. I think he was thinking it was similar to Miranda in 1.0, where he could, if Vagabond had to do his move and then drop, he didn't think about it as much with the ailerons, and also forgot about Bombardier. So it's a combination of that whole thing of making sure you know what you're flying against and remembering those triggers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've all done that. 2
upgrades you've got here that have essentially broken the rules, right? You've got Vagabond who's dropping bombs, as you say, at a different point in the game to anything else, and then Skilled Bombardier to be able to drop it further away than he would have otherwise.
Yeah, and we've all done that. I certainly forget bombs regularly, and it's a good way to lose a game. Trying his best, Plo barrel rolling there to sort of arc dodge 5th Brother, but unfortunately with that 2 straight, which now turns into an amazing move from Sintir, and some nice judgment of the repositioning there from Cormac, if you don't mind me saying, that kind of boost and barrel roll to get into position of getting the Predator and the focus. And Sintir doing his job, rolling with the Predator 3 hits, and one of the with the structural damage, that's enough. Spend the focus anyway. And Plo Koon's off the board. So we're looking at a pretty devastating turn here from Marcel. He's lost a fully healthy Plo, has only got 1 shot coming in from Anakin, and either Anakin or Obi could take significant damage here from the strikers. So we'll talk through these last few rolls, and then have a bit of a chat about sort of where Marcel is and how he comes back into the game.
I think one thing is important to remember here as well is make sure your board state is tidy, because I had actually forgotten about Vagabond having the target lock from Anakin, because
you left it over by 5th Brother, right?
Exactly, and that does change the approach. Vagabond probably still would have chanced it, because he's no advantage to me being back out of the fight. I just want him to be able to ailerons and drop a bomb. So I probably still would have done it, but maybe I'd be a bit more cautious.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be much different, right? If you do the 2 straight rather than the 3 straight, you're out of arc here.
Yeah.
So Pure Sabak here does get the mod of a Predator, and so it's firing into Obi-Wan. 2 hits. That's average, and rerolls into a focus, which, as we previously discussed, he does not have to spend. And so OB rolling all paint, which and spending a force. So that's the first shot out of the way. And now becomes very important how this Anakin shot ends up, because if he were able to PS kill Vagabond here, I think he's very much still in the game. Just has him in mark. It's going to be a single modded proton torp, no focus and no force, but does get to reroll. So 3 out of 5 to start off with, not bad. And then picks up an extra 1 with the reroll, so requires a blank out to kill Vagabond, but might make his spend his focus here, I think, is the sort of more likely outcome. Yeah, and does exactly that. So one focus from Vagabond, has to spend it to stay alive, and now has an unmodded shot coming into these ships. And Vagabond obviously then taking 2 hits and a crit. And so we'll wait to see which crit is dealt.
At this point, I am very, very worried about Vagabond.
Yeah. And that is a stunned pilot, crucially not the direct hit. So alive. And I think still, because of that bomb and because of how well that went versus play, still up in the game. And if you do some damage here to Obi-Wan, or indeed Anakin, looking pretty good. So can you remember who you shoot at here?
I shoot at Obi because the problem with Annie is he can just get out of here so quickly. That I did not expect to be able to follow up that any damage meaningfully next turn.
And as it was, doesn't really matter. You roll only the one crit, and Obi-Wan gets one focus, so he spends his last force to evade, and then both force a regen, and we're into the next turn. Oof! Wow! So that was a pretty eventful turn. Fairly horrible for Marcel with that easily forgotten bomb, and took as much punishment from doing that as you possibly could, losing Plo from full health. But perhaps slightly fortuitous to not take any more damage on either of these two bump ships at the left-hand side of the board. So I said we talk about it, Lloyd, and this is a major point for sort of reassessment here. Marcel's now slightly down on points, but with two limping strikers, both whom are easily PS killable. What's the game plan from now from Marcel?
So it's interesting, right? Because his potential damage output has also just dropped off a cliff because Anakin's now used his advanced proton torpedoes.
Mm-hmm.
So Obi is the one that needs to be getting shots, but Obi is still not in a great place and probably needs to spend a turn or two both kind of dodging strikers and getting back into place where he can start getting shots on things.
And crucially, Obi as well. I was happy that I would have been happier spending damage, but the fact that Obi had no force left at the end of that turn was very helpful for me.
Yeah, it makes him so much less likely to do anything like sloop and then try and just trade shots with you, right? Because once you get to the point of taking unmodded shots or very nearly unmodded shots, the likelihood of killing those strikers, even though they're on 1 health each, is really, really low. And it's not worth the trade for Marcel. So it's interesting, right? Because Anakin is in the best position to get shots on the strikers, but is going to have Fifth Brother tailing him with the threat of homing missiles the whole time. I think Marcel needs to do what we've been saying for the last few turns here and just properly disengage and get himself back to a situation where he needs a couple of turns of Obi-Wan not getting shot to regenerate his force. And he needs Anakin to be able to get to a position where he is behind something and threatening it. Now, weirdly, I think Soontir is probably the easiest thing to get behind in this list, but he risks trading heavily with Fifth Brother if he does that. So something like a 3-bank right from Anakin, potentially this turn, and just token up, knowing that Soontir is probably not 2-turning left, and just give yourself the situation to get behind him and threaten him. Because if you can even keep Soontir out of the fight for the next few rounds, that allows Obi-Wan time to both regen force and then start picking on things.
Yeah, and I think here with Anakin, I was wondering whether you could be more aggressive and Talon roll to the left. I think it probably gives you enough distance from Fifth this turn, and maybe gets you behind sort of the moves that the strikers are going to be doing. But it certainly then Fifth Brother is in the side sort of next turn. Cormac, what as we see these moves go down, where's your kind of head at this point?
So I'm thinking that he's probably doing what Lloyd was suggesting. I'm thinking that he's probably like 5 forwarding with Anakin, and I'm thinking Obi is unlikely to do the sloop because he's only got 1 force and it's quite aggressive. So I'm thinking Obi probably does either 1 hard or 3 bank away, try and get up some force. So that's where I'm assuming that he's going with his ships. So I just covered that arc of where Obi is, in my mind, going to be.
I think you did similar moves to what I would have done. I think where I'd have differed slightly is after that Vagabond move kind of blocks a lot of Obi's short moves. I think I may have slooped Pure back out to the right, so that he's a bit safer, a bit, assuming that Obi-Wan is unlikely to hard turn right, and it sort of just covers more of the board, allows him to get back in next turns rather than barrel rolling Vagabond out of the way and putting Pure back into the same spot.
Did you have in your head at all, Cormac, the idea of blocking with Vagabond? Because obviously, if you get a block with Obi-Wan into the back of you, actually you get a block anyway with Vagabond, all of a sudden those procs ones come right back into play.
Yeah, it was just trying to work out how to get the ailerons and get them both through the far side, because I was most concerned about getting mods, basically. And I was particularly on Sabak because, again, Vagabond, I'm kind of, at this point, I'm not that bothered if I lose him as such.
That's interesting, because I think with that sort of sleep from Pure Sabak, I think in my head there's two things. I think one, he's less likely to be shot there and therefore doesn't need the mods, but also I think for me Pure Sabak is dead effectively. He's a dead man walking, and I just want shots out of him rather than a kind of attempt to keep him safe. Although, well, I was going to say, although he does look like he's safe, but the move that none of us expected and turns out to be the perfect move at this point. That's a really nice sleep there. Very brave decision from Marcel, as you say, leaving himself with the one force, but looks like it's perfect in that he's out of range of fifth brother, range 1 into the side of a 1 health Pure Sabak, or he's got the range 2 shot into a tokenless Vagabond. And Anakin out of the way nicely as well, sort of ducked back inside, also taking no shots and coming round to threaten whichever of the strikers is left alive at the end of this turn. So a really nice recovery turn from Marcel, I think.
Yeah, that feels like really good play, doesn't it? The confidence to kind of dial it and consider it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, reflects on the fact that it's a different and yet still successful way of playing aces that we've not seen a lot of yet on this channel, where Marcel does quite frequently do the aggressive thing.
Yeah, and especially against a more experienced player like Cormac it's maybe even more successful, because the newer player is probably keeping all options open in their mind, whereas Cormac is very much sort of thinking, oh, well, there's no way you sleep here, and therefore discounting it. And I think as more experienced players, you do fall into that trap a bit of just expecting everyone to play in the sort of most sensible, in inverted commas, way. Cormac getting incredibly lucky here. So only the 2 hits following the modification from Obi-Wan, and Pure Sabak having to spend the focus, but doing so to live. And so Marcel not really getting the benefit from his good choice of moves there, and Sabak lives to fight another day. So on this turn, I'd like really to kind of hear from Cormac and focus on, because I think that up to that turn, I think you were playing very well, and you'd got some good results, being slightly unlucky to kind of take so much damage on Sabak in the opening. But that last turn was a little bit more defensive, I think, than I would have been in terms of trying to get the ships safe. Going into this turn, where both strikers are now kind of under threat, what are your thoughts?
So my big concern this turn, and that is as a result of probably being too defensive last turn, is that both my ships can be PS killed, both my strikers can be PS killed before they get a shot. Because whichever way Obi and Annie go, they should be able to shoot the other striker. So I was very, very concerned that actually, how am I going to do this that I don't make that easy for Marcel? So, for example, I thought about Vagabond going left and trying to go for the block on Anakin.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with that is that it's almost impossible to block Anakin. So he either still gets a shot or Obi comes in behind and gets a shot. And same thing with Pure Sabak. I'm thinking, how do I can avoid Obi easily enough, but then Annie can still come and have a pretty decent shot on him. So I wasn't feeling really comfortable about where I was going to put either of them. The only thought process I had is I'm going to try and make it as difficult for Marcel to get the shots, be that from having to spend reposition mods or pre-position mods with Anakin. I was just wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to be, okay, well, I can actually just stay here and take a target lock, or I'm actually happy where I'm going. Because I knew that even with Fifth Brother coming in, he can afford to take damage on Obi, kill the 2 strikers, and then just disappear for the game.
And I think I think that sounds sensible, but again, I think this is where you start to think more defensively, and it almost, if I'm being overly critical, and this is overly critical, it sounds like you're kind of thinking more and more and more defensively, and kind of almost to the exclusion of everything else. And I think that you're right. What you want to avoid is that these two ships can each fire at a different striker and kill them. You're absolutely correct that Anakin, there's no way to avoid him, with the collision detector and with the barrel roll, there's no way to avoid him getting shots on one or other of them.
I mean,
so I
doesn't
think
know he has a collision detector.
yeah, that's true. So I think that my solution would be, if there is a position where one of the strikers could block Obi-Wan and the other one be out of Obi-Wan's blocked arc, then wherever Anakin is, he can only kill one of the strikers. So you sort of try and end up with Obi-Wan getting no shots at all this turn. And I think there are ways to achieve that. I think if you're looking at Obi-Wan, he's got to be either kind of the 1 or 2 bank right if he wants to be aggressive, or the hard turns. If he goes left, then he's not shooting either striker. And I mean, that seems very unlikely at this point, given that he needs points. So I wonder about a 1 bank right from Vagabond, followed by the hard turn, and then barrel roll back in just in front of Sabak, and then maybe sloop Sabak over the top of Vagabond. Because I think if Sabak is hard at this board edge, facing back in towards the centre, that it's almost impossible for Obi to get a shot on him. And then if Vagabond is in a position where he has either arc dodged or blocked Obi, then the only thing shooting is Anakin.
Yeah, and I think.
Sorry, the added benefit of that is if you do manage the block, that then the fifth brother has all the better shot to come in. So the first half, that looks good, right? And I think here, if you barrel roll to the right, that's an almost perfect position. But only if Sabak is doing the sloop.
Yeah, and I think the other point is this is when we were almost at the end of our timer. So I probably wasn't making the optimal choices that I should have, because I probably do need to take a bit longer to be thinking about my moves. Just from a player skill basis, I probably need more time to actually think about things. Whereas I know that this was towards the end of it, and things were definitely getting squeaky bum at this time.
And it's worth noting as well, so just looking at points, I think I'm saying that half of Obi-Wan, even if you get it and keep it, is less than the 2 strikers because of with flow as well, right?
It's actually half of Obi-Wan is 93.
1.5, in fact,
Yeah.
It's very
close. Your goal here is to halve Obi-Wan, regardless, right? Which is 4 damage you need because of the R2 astromech.
Yes.
So you had the maneuver for fifth brother set in that I thought was the 1 bank is nice and simple. It keeps your arc wide. If Obi goes straight and barrel rolls a 2 bank from Soontir, which seems like the only thing he's likely to do, covers that barrel roll perfectly.
But also, even with where pure Sabak is now, a barrel roll back blocks the 1 bank from Obi-Wan.
Yes.
And
I would have been doing the same. I'd have been looking to block Sabak.
Yeah,
and then you only get one on the shot. So interesting to hear, and that does make sense. The rules for this tournament are in terms of timing, are that you play an hour and then 2 rounds, and you guys, we don't have a timer on the screen, but are coming up to the hour mark now, and so there are 2 turns left after this turn, and it does make a lot of sense. I think at the time I was wondering why you weren't doing those barrel rolls, but I think by the sounds of things, it's a mental thing that you just got into your head. Oh, just please let one of them survive, because if they do, I'll be okay.
Yeah, I think looking at it now, I can't even remember this turn, and now looking at with pure Sabak, I am looking going, why didn't I barrel roll with pure Sabak? Like that makes absolutely. I knew where Obi was going to be going, so it's kind of, why wouldn't you have barrel rolled with them?
And as always, right, we say it a lot in this. It's much easier in the cold light of day, sitting here with no time pressure, no points pressure, to make those decisions. It's much harder to do it during a game, and I think for everyone looking back on their games, like I find having my games filmed is really useful because it gives me a chance to review them. But you also have to not be too hard on yourself, because you are doing things under pressure and under a time limit.
Yeah, I completely agree. I just think that what it highlights for Cormac, and I think it's definitely true of me as well, is how much our game is affected by that pressure towards the end of the game.
Mm.
So I've often thought that if I could change one thing about myself as an X-Wing player that would improve how I do in tournaments, it wouldn't really be about, you know, list choice or maneuver choice or anything. It would be about that reaction to pressure. If I could play every turn of every game in the way that I am assessing things sat here watching someone else play, I would be a much, much better player. And so for Cormac, it looks like that as well, that if he is able to improve his ability to focus for those last few turns, to almost ignore the game state, sounds like a funny thing to say, and just play each turn as it comes, that maybe that will kind of improve things. And as I say, this is a one-off. Cormac is a very good player and does do that the majority of the time, but I don't know, is that something you notice?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the kind of thing is you can see in those last few turns is that you can easily become defensive when actually the strength of your list is not being defensive. And you can actually change how you even fly the list based on what's happening in the match. But actually what you always need to be reminding yourself is, how does this list work? What's its benefits? It doesn't still matter if you're up on points, because you need to be up on points at the end of the game. And unless you're playing to its strengths, that might not happen.
And so the positive side of you being up on points and all of the good work that you did earlier in the game is that at this point, Fifth Brother and Cynthia are free to harry Obi-Wan and are under very very little threat, and looks like they will continue to be for the rest of the game. So Cynthia repositioning here to get the focus and get the Predator. You've done a really nice job of doing that all game. Certainly something that you're better at than I am.
Yeah, 2-point Predator for Cormac feels like a bargain. 2-point Predator feels expensive.
And sort of gets slightly under, could have hoped for 3 there, but gets the 2 hits. But Obi, force starved as he is, now starting to feel that and having to spend 1 force to only take 1 hit there, losing a shield, and has the Fifth Brother homing missile coming in later on this turn. But before we get to that, I think Obi himself is going to have a chance to perhaps do what he should have done last turn and kill Sabak, although at this point with 0 mods, so a worse shot than he had last turn. But better dice, so he gets the 3 hits there. Nothing Sabak can do about that. Sabak is off the board, not getting another shot this round.
And as this next shot comes in, I think we see a combination of 2 things, right? We see another insight into the kind of player and person that Marcel is, and also an awareness of points and board state, right? His Anakin took a lock on Vagabond this turn, I think, or was that the same one that's been juggling around? He took it this turn.
No, that was took it this turn.
Yeah, and so knowing that Obi-Wan is going to have a shot into Sabak, he needs to kill a lot of things. Right? He's currently up on points, but his Obi-Wan has a real risk of getting halved here. So he needs to score points and put damage in. So that lock is sort of almost future-proofing, right? He's looking at future turns of how do I then get the damage into there that I need to. Or next turn, if Vagabond is running, how do I make sure I can get double modded shots into him?
Yeah, and as you speak, Obi-Wan, in fact, has just been halved, choosing to take the auto damage from the homing missile there, and Fifth Brother spending both force to add the crit. Seems like a big decision to sort of voluntarily take yourself to half, but the alternative would have been a double modded 4-dice shot into 2 unmodded defense dice, which could have been crippling. So I think, again, very clear thinking and just accepting that, oh, well, this is going to happen, and I've got one regen left to get me back above half. So Cormac currently at 93 points. Anakin rolling blanks and then re-rolling into 1 focus, which he spends, and Vagabond surviving, which is a sort of huge stroke of luck, meaning that if Marcel wants those points, he's going to have to go with Anakin to get them rather than just running everything away. Remind me, Cormac, if Obi-Wan goes back above half, what points does that put you on?
That puts me onto Obi-Wan was 41,
so
half
52.
Yeah.
Okay, so actually, Marcel probably doesn't need to worry about Vagabond at this point, in that if he kills him, he's losing by 1. Although that's very close, and he may not be absolutely aware of that. And if he stays alive, he either loses by 1, loses by more. So the important thing for Marcel winning the match here is Obi-Wan regenning and neither ship going back below half. And as we said earlier, there's now 2 turns left in the game. So at this point, the kind of, as it often happens towards the end of the game, the decisions become a bit more obvious. You can't see Obi-Wan doing anything other than running away here. Anakin either runs away or could kind of turn in to become a bit of a speed bump. I think I quite fancy here Anakin turning in to block either 5th or Suntir. You risk taking the range 1 shot, but would need to take 4 damage to genuinely half Anakin without him having the ability to regen back above half the next turn. And crucially, it would slow you down your ability to chase Obi-Wan. So I think if I'm Marcel, I'd probably dial in the 2 or 3 hard here from Anakin, barrel roll into the way of 5th and Suntir, and have Obi-Wan going 5 straight and boosting around the corner.
Yeah, I was happy at this point again that Obi was quite short on force, and that kind of informed my decision a lot as well, because I'm thinking, okay, obviously he's going to try and get out, he's going to try and regen, but he hasn't got the natural mods to just be defensive and just run away. So he's going to have to be very, very careful. So if I can just, at this point, my win condition is I just need to take 1 point off Obi. Now, looking at, I kind of think I probably should have been more careful with Vagabond, but I've almost just become, okay, I have to assume Vagabond is going to die in the next 2 turns. So how do I get my win condition? And it was just getting a point on Obi.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I think Vagabond is unless he gets shots, Vagabond is kind of irrelevant at this point, given how the points have worked out. Although within the tournament, obviously a larger win is better. So trying to keep him safe is not completely worthless. The problem occurs to me with my Anakin blocking 5th Brother plan is that 5th Brother is moving first. So maybe the block on Suntir is I think what I'd play for.
And I think 5th Brother's position will give you a lot of information about where Suntir's going to end up, right? Because he has to leave enough space for Suntir's blue maneuver to fit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The only thing I was slightly concerned here was that Obi could easily, rather than 5 away, there was a chance that Obi could easily 1 hard or 2 hard. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to cover that with Vagabond slightly. Obviously, Vagabond could very likely be dead, but at least Marcel was going to have to make a choice. He was going to have to choose one way or the other.
And that's a real option, and not one I could have considered. But the aggressive sort of hard 1 or hard 2 in here does sort of risk from 5th Brother and Suntir's point of view that they fly straight past. And I think the 3 bank sadly doesn't quite work, does it? Because he can't boost, although he can boost after he's been through a gas cloud, he can't boost through a gas cloud.
I dropped a bomb here purely because I think Vagabond is going to die, and it prevents Anakin from doing the barrel roll to the bottom of the board and the 3 hard in case he wanted to use that position.
And is that why you use you dropped it with the 2 straight rather than the 1 straight?
Yes.
Because I think what you've traded for, that makes sense. But I think had you dropped it with a 1 straight, then I think a 3 bank from Anakin is also dangerous. So you could, if you dropped it with the 1 straight and say 3 bank 5th Brother in here, you mean that he can't. You remove his ability to barrel roll up board, and had he done a straight or bank maneuver, he's kind of forced to fly into that bomb. So I think as you've done there, but I think had you put this in with a straight, then you kind of pincer him a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair.
But a very, very minor point. And as you say, sort of Vagabond, I know, mainly, I suppose, just dropping the bomb because he's unlikely to be able to drop it usefully ever again in the game.
So from this position with 5th Brother, what are you looking? Are you looking to still just pressure Obi-Wan rather than block Anakin and slow him down?
Yeah, it's purely, I'm not even thinking about Anakin. It's purely to get pressure onto Obi-Wan, because if he does do something slow, then Suntir will have an opportunity to catch him. If he has done a 5, I may have a shot, or he'll have to use his mod, so that again, next turn, at least I get a shot. I'm almost assuming I might not get a decent shot this turn, but if I get one at least next turn, that's going to be the shot to try and win the game on the last round.
The hard turn right from Obi-Wan is looking better and better, isn't it? It's likelier at this point that Anakin PS kills Vagabond, and if he hard turns in, there's no way Suntir shoots him. I think that will probably be game, assuming that Vagabond doesn't survive and perform miracles. But obviously that is with, knowing where 3 out of the 5 ships have moved, and going for probably the more sensible percentage play of the 5 straight, and I'm expecting to see a combination of boost and barrel roll here to get him out of Arc of Fifth Brother.
Yeah, the only interesting thing here is that he obviously still has that 1 force, which is crucial. So he's thinking about where Suntir is coming in, and using up too many of his mods there's an interesting payoff between getting out of Fifth Brother's Arc but being completely defenseless against Suntir.
Yeah, and because he hasn't got any margin for error, right? I think if he had two shields, and he has regen here, so it's back above half, but I think he had 2 shields at this point, then you could almost risk taking the shot from Fifth Brother with only a single mod. But as 1 damage at any point in this turn or the next probably loses him the game, has to be super cautious. Then the other thing to think about here is for newer players, I think every decision should be given the same weight, right? So the obvious sort of goal here from Obi-Wan is trying to achieve is being out of Arc of Fifth Brother. There's a number of ways to do that, but what you really want to do in the kind of high level play that you're about to see here from Marcel is do it in a way that uses the fewest possible tokens. So keep your force if possible, and after we see the boost come in here, doing the barrel roll and then the boost has left Marcel the ability to go straight next turn without running into this gas cloud in the bottom right hand corner of the board. Had he done that the other way around, I think had he boosted and barrel rolled, he would have been heading towards that gas cloud, and his runaway options for next turn would have been that much reduced. And so small things like that are sort of really easy to miss if you're watching a game, but actually that could have been the difference between a win and loss in this game, the decision to barrel roll and boost rather than boost and barrel roll, because of the tiny differences it makes to where you end up. So Suntir here out of Arc, currently with no shots. It sort of looks a bit trapped behind Fifth Brother.
Yeah, I was really hoping that I'd be able to just get the 1 bank boost over Fifth Brother, but obviously it was just too close to even attempt it. At this stage, I am tempted to turn on Annie, but the amount of damage that I have to do to Annie, and the fact that he has to regen, meant that even if I did 3 damage to him this turn, which was unlikely, he regens that next turn and he just 5 forwards.
Yeah, you're just not in a position to follow up next turn.
No.
Yeah, you'd have to be either taking unmodded shots or stressed, and you get no more shots into him. So I think the correct decision is to try and get back round for Obi here. The barrel roll right and boost around the corner looks like it gets you an unmodded range 3 shot this turn, but does obviously leave you stressed for next turn. And I suppose the other option was to forego any shots this turn, leaving yourself the 3 hard for next turn. But between the 2, the 3 hard and the 2 bank, I suppose they both end you up in the same place. So more shots is better.
And also, again, because Obi doesn't have that force, it's really important to... I was really kind of focused on that, thinking, okay, he's only a Delta 7B. If I can get a shot, it's unmodded, but he has unmodded evades. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's 3 versus 3. Red dice, slightly more advantage to me. So it was kind of like, okay, this is not perfect, but equally, if Obi had 1 or 2 force, then...
Yeah. Then the shots are less valuable, yeah.
And speaking of not perfect, 3 blank reds there, and Obi lives, and so this is range 1, so this is going to be 3 dice into 2, double modded with the force and target lock, or in fact no, the target lock was spent last turn, so single modded, but 3 hits nevertheless, and that's enough to get rid of Vagabond. And so now Marcel on that crucial 92 points. Game state has not changed greatly. Cormac, you need to get decent shots into Obi-Wan here, and it's not looking great. He's going to have only the 1 force, but can go faster than you this turn.
This is the last turn as well, so at this point we know that I only have one chance to get Obi.
And so Anakin here, sort of almost irrelevant, presumably hard turn, barrel roll, try to get some arcs pointing in the vague direction of your ships. And Suntir having to 2-bank, do you think, or is there an alternative solution here? And fifth brother with, I assume, a 3 hard, just get everything as close to Obi-Wan as possible. And for me, Obi-Wan is 5 straighting, boosting, and taking a focus. I can't see him doing anything else. What do you think, Lloyd?
Well, I think again what we've seen from Marcel is he's not afraid to do something unusual, right? And if you're expecting fifth to either turn or at the very least boost and bank and boost to try and get a bit more range since he's already got a lock. A 2 hard from Obi suddenly doesn't look terrible. Again, you're probably still taking a shot from Suntir, but if you can end up in a situation where Suntir has to double reposition to get that shot, you're looking at, you will have a focus token and Suntir might not. So it's always looking at the unexpected, right? It would be incredibly unlikely, I'd have thought, for fifth brother to 1 turn and then boost left. So suddenly the 2 turn from Obi-Wan looks appealing, but I think you're likely to always try and hide behind that gas cloud. So I think probably a 5 forward barrel left focus is what you would expect to see.
Yeah, I think the 2 hard's definitely a good consideration. This 2 hard and then a combination of barrel and boost could potentially see you between these sort of central 2 gas clouds right in the middle of the board. And then if Suntir has gone fast to try and catch your fast move, then you're probably taking no shots and you're okay. I'm not quite sure how that works out. If fifth brother 3 hards and then barrel rolls, that makes life a bit more difficult, but still possible. But I think the temptation of that gas cloud is too great, right? You got to think that if you were to go 5 straight forwards and either boost or barrel to get behind the cloud, then you're taking shots through that gas cloud, and then hopefully that will be enough.
But I think this is sort of typical X-Wing, right? You end up with a situation where it's a 50-50, you're both trying to call what the other person is going to do. Yeah. So if I was Cormac here, a barrel left from fifth, it looks incredible.
Yeah, well, my initial aim here had been 3 bank or 3 hard and then boost left. That was the plan, to cover that area. In case Obi did because that's the thing with Jedis, they can either go really fast or they can turn right on themselves. So you always have to be watching for it. I knew that fifth wasn't going to, if Obi went 5 straight, he wasn't going to make that distance up. So I may as well use him to cover an area that Obi could go into.
Yeah.
And so they're the 2 hard right, I think, would have, with the combination of boost and barrel, at least arc dodge fifth and probably be in a good position. But the 5 straight and boost is the choice, and looks like that's out of range of fifth. So it's all about, can Suntir catch up here? 4 straight there. Why?
It was because it was to get the most distance forward possible. So I knew that a 4 with the barrel roll and boost was the only way that I was actually going to be able to get a shot on Obi. If I went 2 bank, I wouldn't actually get close enough.
Nice, because the barrel roll here on the diagonal actually moves you towards. That's very nice thinking. I think I'd have done the 2 bank and then been left without a shot.
It did cover in case he went towards the board edge, but I thought that was unlikely. But it covered that. But it was more predominantly just, okay, how do I make distance? And sometimes doing the angled move just makes more.
Yeah, and so we've got the final shot here, range 3, unmodified. 3 dice, unmodified into 3 dice with a focus, needing to do 1 damage to take the game by a point. And it doesn't seem likely at this point. I suppose you've given yourself a chance, and that's the best you could do. Since you're rolling 2, not bad. So 2 paint needed from everyone. Oof, and does not get it. So in the final shot of the game, you take that last shield and win by 1 point. Well done.
Yes. It was a decidedly closer when we actually worked out the points. Like, I mean, I knew that half of Obi and Plo was more than the 2 strikers, but when we worked it out and it was 93 to 92, I think there was a sense of, oh, it was that close.
And a really good game. So I think, a good point to wrap up. And I think from my kind of take home from that is sort of similar to a few games we had before. Marcel coming back really, really well from a horrible turn on sort of turn 3 or 4 of the game there. It would have been very easy to lose sight of your objectives there and kind of just continue to make mistakes and really lose hard. And to get to the point where he actually, in the end, was unlucky to lose it was sort of testament to how well he was able to refocus, have a game plan, take out those strikers, and also have the confidence to allow his ships to take some damage. I think that's certainly something I'd have been worried about. Those turns where he needed to turn OB in to kill the strikers and just accept that he was going to take some damage from Sintir and Fifth coming up. I think I'd have been inclined to try and get OB out of trouble and would probably have ended up losing by never scoring any more points and leaving those strikers rolling around because I'd been sort of too scared to turn in on them. Cormac, for you, we'll start with you. What were your kind of takeaways from the game, kind of learning points?
Well, I think there's a couple. Like the interesting thing watching it again is that I think paying close attention to the other person's list is really important, because we saw it both on my side with forgetting collision detector and on Marcel's side not knowing about Vagabond when he drops it. I think those were 2 points that easily changed the game. And from two players who are used to playing against lots of different things, it can still happen that you just don't pay attention. And I think that was one of the big ones. And I think the other big bit of it is I can see easily through the middle of that game how I allow myself to become more defensive when that's counter to the strengths of the list that I'm actually running.
Yeah, and to go back to that point, because I thought you made that point really well in the middle there, and I think to kind of highlight it, at the time it feels like the thing to do, but actually if you look at it, with a clear mind, what you were attempting to do was with 1 health, 2 agility ships that moved before your opponent's list, you were attempting to keep them alive. And whilst you don't want to throw them away, that as a game plan, as a way you win the game, these 1 health, 2 agility ships remain alive to the end of the game, that sounds like a bad game plan, right?
Yeah. For that list, and that's yes, the kind of thing is knowing your list and knowing its strength is that there's no point in playing it for 45 minutes perfectly the way that it should be, and then for the remainder of the game then changing that too much to make it weaker. Now obviously you have to be sensible. If you're up on points or you're down on points, you do have to adapt, but you always have to remember what is the core fundamental that your list is good at, and not trying to do something different.
And I think an element of that for you, because you are a more cautious, more AC player, is that in that pressure situation you were kind of defaulting to your normal play style rather than defaulting to the play style of the list, which is exactly what you said. But I think is worth repeating because it is a really good learning point and something to get out of it. And Lloyd, for you, what did you think of the game? Kind of takeaways from either side?
So I think I came out with 3 main takeaways. So as Cormac said, right, X-Wing isn't a game of surprises, right? Your opponent will show you their list in advance and you know everything it can do, but it's that importance of keeping all of that in your head and being aware of the tricks that it has. So as you said, the Vagabond ability, the skilled bombardier, the collision detector were all things that players missed in this game, and it's really easy for that to swing a game one way or the other. The second thing is, so we saw the Delta 7B here, which is obviously the tankier version, but we've seen another way to fly aces. And I think in all of these things, where we're giving sort of advice or opinions or sort of seeing good players doing well, it's worth bearing in mind that there are other options and other ways to fly these things. Mm-hmm. And so the tankier aces presents, and certainly the way Marcel flies them, presents another way to fly AC ships very differently to what we've sometimes seen in the past. Yeah. In Cormac's feedback, he mentioned that he flew perfectly for 3/4 of the game. And I thought I just took issue with that, and I felt like we had to comment on it before we finished. I can't let that go unchallenged.
Oh no! Actually, I said well, you can fly perfectly for 45 minutes. I never said I did. Clearly, I know that's not true.
Cool. So I think that all that remains to be said is thank you very, very much to Cormac for coming on and talking us through it. Huge thanks to Marcel for allowing us to record the game and for putting up such a good show and entertaining us so much with a really, really close, in fact, the closest game we've had on the channel so far. And to say thanks to everybody for keeping watching and tune in next Tuesday for another game. Thanks very much.